it's a cybersecurity session, and we will talk about supply chain. I have to speed up, so please forgive me for the fast moving on. What is supply chain? In a short description, in order to have access to the internet, you have a wireless access point that is built somewhere in China. You have a telecom provider that provides you access to the network. You have an ISP or internet service provider. And last but not least, you have electricity. So all these are working together in order to have a service, which is the access to the internet. This is the supply chain. And the supply chain, as you understand, affects your services or your products. So the NIS2 directive, which is what it's a framework to strengthen the cybersecurity and the cyber resilience across Europe. The NIS2 has focused on supply chain because it has identified the threats and the risk, and it has introduced the third-party risk management, which is actually your suppliers, and especially has focused on incident reporting about your suppliers, well, what has happened in their organizations. And it has set advanced security standards of how the suppliers and the service providers should work and how you should work with them. This is the NIS2. The NIS2, can say, it's the new version of NIS and has 6 major changes, which has defined a broader scope, additional security requirements, strong cooperation among the EU members, incident security requirements, which are tight, and has increased fines, which have actually include the managing members of the organizations. So the senior management of every organization now is accountable about the security and the incidents. The NIS Directive 2 has 2 pillars, so has separated the organizations in essential and important. Electricity or energy is on the essential pillar. These 2 pillars, I'm not going to read them since you already have the presentation, are defined according to the revenue, which the essentials, I think it's 250 billion euros per year, while the others are, the other pillar, the important ones, is only 50 euros is only. Okay, it's something. So this is the NIS2 and an introduction to supply chain. And let's see what the supply chain introduces. Initially, we were talking about the customer there. This used to be the terrain, the cyber terrain where the adversaries were targeting. Right now, they have expanded the attack surface using the suppliers, meaning what? That in order to achieve their goals and come into your house, your organization, I mean, they're targeting the supplier, and they're coming through the supplier to affect your operation, your services, your infrastructure. The techniques that they are using are the common ones. They're not doing something new. they're attacking the guys from the supplier chain. Either they are the air conditioner operators or maintenance team, or even your cloud provider. And they're coming into your software, to your service, to get your data or to stop you from doing business. This one has been, this technique, let's say, or this trend has been identified by everyone, and NISA is one of them, which is actually has put it in as the first threat to compromise the software that you are using. Imagine that actually a library, a software library that you may use may be compromised in order to target and infect your software. There are some statistics regarding the rise of the supply chain attacks, and you can see. You're welcome. Yes. Wait? Okay. So this slide depicts actually the trend till 2023 and a projection of the $1 billion that the supply chain attacks will have. Let's move into some examples that already in the public. The Kaseya, which is a virtual service provider that serves customer as an IT, has a remote software which was infected, and as a result of this, his customer, Kaseya's customer, were infected, and their customers lose their data. And they have, and it was also a ransomware attack. So they lose the data because of Kaseya's fault. Okay, I'm moving on. This is the steps of the attack, but I will pass it. We don't have time. One of the most known and major supply chain attacks was the SolarWinds. The SolarWinds attack took place injecting in the normal patching software. It was a legitimate software, a legitimate patch that SolarWinds was sending to his customer, and as a result, major companies and US agencies were compromised and their data were exfiltrated. It was said that it was the initial reason for the SolarWinds was an account, a lost account, a lost FTP account, yes, that they use. How the attackers achieve their goals? Using the normal techniques, as we've said, either phishing, either malware injection, or exploiting software vulnerabilities. You might have heard about the Log4j vulnerability. It was last year, I think. I'm not going through them. What assets they are targeting? We'll talk about existing software, libraries, or pieces of code that you might have used. Maybe you do use code from ChatGPT or published code that you can find somewhere. Data processes, even hardware. maybe, let's say, not the hardware itself, but the firmware on the hardware. Yes?
Then you have to pinpoint here the hardware, how it was affected by Israelis.
Ah, yes. This was hardware.
Yeah,
No.
so yes. It was not very common, but we identified a couple of months, weeks ago.
Sorry, Kostas, you know there is an alien attack on the beepers, on the beeper machines. That's what Kostas is describing. Yes, thank you, Kostas.
This is a case of even how hardware can be compromised. Of course, the Israelis set up a new operation, but the bottom line was they tried to produce alternative devices with manipulated hardware where they planted explosives as well as triggering device in order to explode these beepers whenever they wanted. And actually they managed to produce somehow these new devices under the brand of the manufacturer and send them across to the target. So this is a recent example of how things are changing and how quick they are changing. So we have to expect everything. This is the point.
Thank you, Kostas. What they are targeting, the adversaries, is your data, either organizational business data or personal data. Maybe it's your software, your intellectual property, I mean. They can use your bandwidth for denial of service attacks, or even the people themselves, as Kostas said, because the Israeli attack actually killed people. Okay. Countermeasures and practices, you have to know which are your suppliers. Okay. Let's say, group the suppliers according to the criteria that you define and maybe the business you're in. Then you have to assess these risks in order to define measures to manage them, to reduce the risk. And if you have it all set it up, then you have to monitor it. And we have to say that the first line of defense is that people show awareness among your companies and your people is a crucial thing. Thank you, Hugo. Okay, I will move forward regarding the relationship with your suppliers. We have to manage this area, how you will work with them. Maybe you have to put an audit schedule with your suppliers. If you are not obliged or you don't have the capacity to audit by yourself your suppliers, a third one organization maybe is capable to audit your suppliers. And last but not least, when you're working with someone else, it's good to have a compliance, a knowledge that your suppliers are compliant with security and industry standards. Either this is the 27001 from ISO, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, the SOC 2, the SOC 2, it's like ISO, but for the American side, or the ENISA, or the NIST. You can see it, most of them are public. The NIST are public, the ENISA is public, the ISO not so much. We have used the ISO standard, the NIST Secure Software Development Framework and the ENISA Good Practices for Supply Chain in order to build questionnaires in our tools. And we have designed this tool in order to be something that you will use for the supply chain risk assessment of your suppliers. So, the first tool is the sandbox. We have already spent some time talking yesterday. The sandbox is a tool that is using other tools in order to identify a potential threat of a newly acquired equipment or software. We spent a lot of time yesterday. I'm not going to spend more. The tool itself is organized in 3 layers. The first layer is the instance, meaning the installation of the software. In this part of the software, CyberNoesis has access. Underneath are the tenants. The tenants are the operators, you. Each operator may have its own ecosystem or his own domain of vendors. So every tenant has the capability to create or to introduce his own vendors. In each layer, the tenants have data isolation, meaning what? One tenant cannot see the data of the other tenant. So the data are isolated. If you want, we may have an application layer of isolation, meaning what? An instance dedicated to your organization. But what you will lose there? In this design, you have the ability to compare your assessment across the aggregated data of all the tenants on the same instance. So you can actually check where are you standing and where, let's say, the community of the DSOs or TSOs are now. So you have to find out what is more, what is best for your organization. In this place, you have questionnaires, guidelines, and reports. The questionnaires you have are based, is actually not is based, is ISO 27002. The 27001 is Information Security Management System, while the 2 is the questionnaire. And we're having also the ENISA Good Practices for Supply Chain Cybersecurity. As for the vendors we've said that reside beneath a tenant. They have the same capabilities. No vendor can see others' vendor data, but the EPES can see the results of the vendor's assessment because actually it's his suppliers. So he has this ability. The vendors, moreover, can compare their assessment against the rest of the vendors that they are in the same EPES. What we have used here is the ISO as a standard for questionnaires and the Secure Software Development Framework from NIST because it's more software-oriented. What we have done for the R2D2 specific, since we have tenants or EPES, we have created this layer of tenants with all of you. I think I don't forget anyone. And we have created an additional virtual tenant, let's say, which we called it R2D2. And beneath R2D2, we have all the vendors. So everyone can do his assessment and compare himself against the average or the aggregated average of all other vendors. The tenants will have an account or will discuss it to see the results of the vendors that they are working, but they will have access to complete the questionnaires by themselves. So, and compare their assessment against the other vendors of the project. This is the presentation of what we have done so far. I don't know if there are any questions, or we can jump to...
Let's have the question at the end of your presentation.
So,
no hubiera sido mejor aquí tener los tenants por debajo de cada piloto, por ejemplo. Aquí hay un tenant por piloto y luego los vendors por cada tenant. Tener varios vendors por debajo de cada uno de los pilotos.
this is the URL. This is the URL of the tool.
If you have any question for later, raise your hand and I will bring you the microphone. Otherwise, it cannot be recorded.
Ugo, what is the at? Character.
What is this?
The at. You know, at.
Maybe we can cut this part in the video editing. Do you want me to stop sharing screen, George?
No, no, no. For my account, since I am an instance admin, I have enabled. For my account, since I am an instance admin, I have enabled two-factor authentication. The second factor is actually a code that it is sent to your email. The emails that I have used to create the rest of the tenants and users are fake, but we will send you guides how you will provide us information in order to create real accounts to use. This is the first page of the tool, okay, that actually displays results about the reports and the assessment of the entire installation. You can check here the types of report of the assessments, excuse me, that we have done. Most of them are tests to find out that the tool works as it should be. This is the area that you can actually run an assessment. And these are the assessments that we have already done in order to test the tool. Okay. I don't know if we have the time, but these are the guidelines that you can choose. It might be the ISO or the NIST supply chain for software assessment, excuse me, or the ENISA. And from this, that I don't know if you're going to use, you can see the frameworks, but also you can add an additional framework. This is something that we have to prepare. If there is such a need, the tool has the capability to import new frameworks and support them. These are reports that regard the tenants or the vendors. The vendors have no reports. I was planning to create an assessment right now. I don't know if we'll have the time. And this is the user management. All these are users that we have created. These are the tenants I was talking about. We have created the tenants. The emails of the administrators, I will show you, are not valid. They're just edpadmin@gmail.com. So when you will send us an email, we replace this in order to have access. And we have created some vendors here to start working with it. I think we have more. I don't know if it's pretty easy to create a vendor. You just have to fill in this. I don't know if you want me to go through, but I can, if we have time to input data right now.
You had comments about how this should actually work. Yeah, just to add a couple of remarks here about how this will actually work in practice. Imagine that you are a DSO, TSO, an organization.
In front of the camera.
Ah, okay. I'm Kostas. So, how this would work? Imagine an organization, a large organization, a TSO, DSO, whatever, that actually wants to assess the overall posture of the supply chain. So what an organization should do is to identify what kind of suppliers might exist in the ecosystem, and the organization most possibly will generate different questionnaires for each supply group, let's say, supplier group. For example, okay, the organization needs to measure the risk coming from the suppliers. So each supplier might have different requirements. If you are a software developer providing software to DSO, then the question should be very specific regarding the software development process. Are you following some best practices for developing software? Do you have some controls in place? How do you manage updates? So these are the type of questions that an organization might want to be asked to the supplier. In another kind of supplier, which might be a cloud provider, then there might be different kind of questions, not regarding the software development itself, but about the operation. How do you maintain the systems? How are they updated, patched, etc.? So in every area, you might need to raise different questions in order to assess the risks related with each organization. So the bottom line is, as George showed you, the TSO will most probably generate different kind of questionnaires targeting specific supplier groups. And the bottom line is that after I request from my suppliers to answer these questionnaires, I can have a very clear understanding about what is the posture of each supplier. And after doing that, what's next? Most possibly, is that I might request from specific suppliers to conduct some additional steps regarding the posture they have in cybersecurity. So this is the way that I will actually manage to measure the risk from a supply chain and actually not only measure, but also treat somehow the risk, because I will request additional activities, actions to be conducted by them. Okay, so, and this is the governance framework, actually. Yeah.
When you say suppliers, you mean vendors?
Yes.
After that are below, okay. And the different kind of, and vendors, of course, and the different kind of questionnaires that a tenant, because in your example, I understand that the SO should be kind of tenant here for the for your application, for your service, and these questionnaires are already are based on ISO 27
Yes.
and 2.
The ISO actually can cover some or the majority of the requirements that Kostas said. Because if you are a service provider, ISO actually cover how you work and the processes and the people and the organization. If you are a software vendor, you should have the ISO because it talks about organization, people, and technical stuff. But you also have the software. Maybe we have to have additional questionnaires, as Kostas said, but we do not know the business that you are running, and we have the capability to add extra questionnaires. That's what Kostas is pointing out.
Yeah, because this is how it will work in action. For the R2D2 purposes, actually we'll have a generic questionnaire, most possibly the ISO 27001, which is a benchmark. And most probably all of us might use this questionnaire for assessment.
Can you show briefly what's in the questionnaire?
Yes.
And I also want to clarify something, because George also mentioned, if you noticed, that actually we have two kinds of assessment, one of which is targeting the vendors, all these kind of questionnaires we discussed previously, but there is another type of questionnaires for self-assessing the TSO. So this kind of questionnaire is actually to assess ourselves regarding the overall processes we have as an organization on how we manage the supply chain. Okay, this is a different approach. We assess ourselves generally. Okay, so yeah.
In order to show you the assessment itself, we have a user. I'm going to log in as a vendor to complete an assessment that we have already done. So spare me a minute to log in as a vendor.
Okay, and regarding the next step of this kind of tool, of course, there are many other features that we could actually add in the future, like the more dynamic assessment of the vendor. Imagine that one trend is actually to conduct not only an assessment, but also to try to identify possible risks related with a specific vendor by collecting information from the internet, from various sources. So you actually, as an organization, you are trying to build a risk profile of your supplier, not only with the questions each vendor is answering, but also by collecting information from other sources in order to establish an overall risk model for its supplier. This is the trend. This is how it will work, because it is a very difficult issue and one of the major risks that we will face in the coming years.
Okay, now I have used an account that is, it comes from a vendor. I have to finish. So you can see that this account has not the capabilities to see neither tenants nor either vendors. And for user management, it's just himself. So the assessment for this vendor, which is Cisco, I think no one is offended, you can go there and find out what are the assessments that are in process right now. They are not completed, but they are in process. And then you can go there. Ella? Sorry. We don't have any ISO yet, but you can actually run an ISO assessment. You can see that the security assessment that is based on the ENISA questionnaire has answered the 43 or 44 questions. So I'm going here and press continue. This is actually the assessment. It poses a question there. Does your organization review the SDLC process? You can go there and find more data to help you answer the question. And you can put either not implemented or partially implemented or fully implemented. And you can actually say that it's not applicable for me, this question. It depends on your organization. Let's say that.
As you can imagine, this could go even further and get even harder. I mean, maybe you could also request to provide evidence of its compliance status. So, yeah, but this is the next phase.
And then you this is the tree where this question resides. On the left, you can see where is the domain of this question set. And as you answer this question, you submit the answer, and you have finished the assessment. Although you have finished the assessment, you have to approve it or reject it, because we suppose that someone else should also evaluate the answers or whatever. So whenever you're ready, you approve and you confirm your approval, and the assessment, now it's done. So when you're going back to the dashboard, you will see the results. Before, you were seeing nothing. It was a blank screen since you did not have any assessment. And you can use whatever dashboard it's more suitable to you.
Yeah, we are using these spider diagrams in order to give you an overview of the maturity regarding the categories of the controls. So,
okay, some letters are
yeah.
overlapping here, but okay.
Yeah, you know, these charts actually give you an overview about the overall status. Of course, most of these questions are
using the
demo.
software in any way you want. You are more than welcome to send us your comments for improvements or whatever you think it would be helpful. And from here, you can see the status list, and then you can see the answers that you have sent for the assessment, and you can actually export it as a PDF to disseminate it. What have I done? Yes, here. To send it wherever you want via email or whatever. We'll keep history and about the assessments, and in order to compare yourself according to the past assessments. I can spend more time if you want to show how to create a user, how to create a tenant, whatever you want. It's not that much. We don't keep personal data. It's just an email, which it might not be a personal email, but rather a rolling email, whatever you need, and a name and surname and a short description about this one, which actually can be my administrator of assessment, whatever you want. No personal data are stored. In any case, the data are encrypted. Are you okay? Do you want me to keep on saying things?
No, I think the next steps will be starting using, or maybe starting validating the
Yes,
tool
we'll send
in the
you,
project, because
we'll send you a way to ask for accounts. And
maybe in the next call that we're going
the
to have.
the last word.
Okay, please.
You will be able to use two-factor authentication, since you will be able to have two-factor authentication in order to access the tool. This user is not a real one. It's just for testing purposes and does not have the two-factor authentication enabled. That's all. Thank you, Hugo.